Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Abigail. Most of my videos have to do with health issues, feeding tubes, and special needs. But today I wanted to share a story time with you all. The story time is going to be about my gastroperesis diagnosis and what led up to that. This is going to be based off of my memory. There was some of this time that a lot happened. I don't know if I'll get the story completely correct, but this is the way I remember it, and I figured since some of my videos are about gastroperesis, I would talk about this. And I think that sometimes sharing your own story about some of your health issues is kind of a more comforting way to deal with it. If you don't know what gastroperesis is, it's where it basically means partially paralyzed stomach. So some people have gastroperesis from diabetes, but that is not why I have it. So first of all, I was born with a rare birth defect called congenital diaphragmatic hernia, also known as CDH. A lot of people are confused about what it does, but basically the simple version is it causes things like for some of my insides to be in the wrong spot. My insides can move. I've had multiple surgeries to help fix different things. I have delays from my birth defect. I have some small diagnoses, like I have scoliosis, but I don't feel like my scoliosis affects me too much. I mean, it sometimes affects like my posture, but I have several diagnoses because of my birth defect, but the thing I want to focus on in this video is my gastroperesis. So when it happened, I was having some health issues, and I was needing to go in for a surgery. I had a hernia and I needed to get that fixed. The problem is that because of my birth defect, I'm a hard patient, because my insides are different because of my birth defect. And so a lot of times it takes a specialist to go in there and see what's going on. Well, we went with a general surgeon instead of a specialist. And I want to be careful about how I talk about this, because I don't want it to sound like I'm talking bad about the surgeon or anything like that. I know it was a mistake what happened. It was an accident. But basically, what I remember from it was it was at our main hospital, and that day I remember our pastor and his wife came, because it was always a thing that when somebody in our church had a surgery, our pastor would come and he would pray, if it was a hospital close enough to come. And so that's what we did. We told our pastor and his wife the time of surgery. They came down and prayed with me, and everything seemed completely fine. The day before surgery, I had this like really weird dream about like us like panicking and like being nervous, but of course I didn't really think anything of it. Like, it's just nerves, right? Like, you don't actually think something's gonna happen. And so, like I said, we get to the hospital. get changed, everything's normal. Our pastor and his wife comes in the room after I change, and we say a prayer, and I'm off to surgery. Well, when I came back into the room, the room that I was going to be in, because we knew at that point that I was probably going to be in there a couple of nights healing. At least one night. But there was a lot going on that I didn't know. I, was on a lot of medication and resting. Nobody wanted to bother me. And I remember I was in the room, the room that you're in after surgery, and and people would like come to the hospital, because it was our general hospital. So people would come, they'd give me gifts, and it was actually kind of fun to see everybody, it was neat. And at this time, they didn't really want me to know that something was wrong. We knew that something was wrong. We didn't know exactly what. So I was told I needed to spend a couple more days in the hospital to find out what's going on. I remember this extreme pain in my stomach like I had never felt before. It was awful. I would have to walk down the hall, I think it was like a couple of times a day. I feel like I could barely walk. I was on like liquidy foods, like Jello and foods like that, mostly liquids, and we just thought, oh, it's my stomach healing from this surgery, and we didn't know anything about gastroperesis at that point. After, I think it was about three days or so, I got released to go home, and I still wasn't feeling good, but we thought, oh, it's just a extreme surgery, of course you're gonna be sore. So I go home, and I was in so much pain, I could barely walk. It was awful. I think it was probably, I don't remember the exact time frame of when everything happened, because at this point I was just, I was sleeping a lot through this, so I don't remember like the timing of it all. But I do remember that I went home, and after a few days we had a checkup with my surgeon. So it's a general surgeon, not a specialist, by the way. And he was like, why don't you try to eat just like a normal size meal and see how it does on your stomach. And so I did. I ate a normal size meal, and it just, nothing we were doing was helping. No medications we tried. And finally, the second time I went to the surgeon's office, he was like, I think you might need to go see a specialist. I don't know what's going on. I know that something happened. He knew that he hit something, but he didn't know exactly what happened. So I had to go to a specialist that was out of town, and I went to see the specialist, and they were like, we're going to do a gastric emptying study. I was like, what's that? Basically, they had me eat dyed eggs and toast, and I'm supposed to eat until I'm full. And then it was like a 5-hour test, I think it was. And every hour, I'm supposed to have a picture of my stomach to see how fast my stomach is emptying. Because if you have gastroparesis, not only is your stomach partially paralyzed, but your food will digest slower. And so I went out of town to have that test done. It was like an all-day test. And the test came back that, yes, I do have gastroparesis. They put me on a special diet. It was like low fiber. I was supposed to eat, it was like every other hour that if I was hungry, and it was like a toddler size meal. So I could only eat a toddler size meal at a time, and I had to have an hour in between for my food to digest. So after I was told that I have gastroperesis, that's when um that whole like diet change started. And um that's because of that test, that's how I found out that I had gastroparesis. So that's my gastroparesis story for you all. If you have any questions of something that I haven't covered, let me know. I do have gastroparesis still on top of a hernia, and they couldn't fix it, so that's why I'm on a feeding tube now. Because I could not keep down my food. I would constantly get sick after I'd eat. Like, it was like 30 minutes to an hour after I'd eat, I would get sick. So they put me on a feeding tube because I lost a lot of weight, and this feeding tube has been great. I've gained great weight on it. It's been good. The button that I got to get my button replaced every like few months, and the new button that they put in, it's been really sore and like sensitive. It can do that. So I just have to wait till I get it changed again and like hope that the new button isn't as painful. But because this button is painful, this feeding tube button, it's just kind of something I gotta deal with. But I'm glad that I'm not getting sick on a daily basis. People ask what I can have by mouth. I can have certain kinds of candy that melts, such as like chocolate, and some kinds of ice cream, as long as it's like plain or has sprinkles. But yeah, most of my calories, basically all of my calories come from my feeding tube, and then the few kinds of like pieces of candy that I can have, I have a G tube that I vent out, which is kind of like getting sick, but out my feeding tube. And then my J tube that goes to my intestines, that's where I get my feedings from. So thank you all so much for watching. Be sure that you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you all so much for the prayers, the concerns, the positive comments. Like I said, this button has been hurting, but I have dealt with it pretty well. And I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.